Okay, so this is the Rupp-uary Q&A for Scooter Dude's domain. Uh, I wasn't gonna originally take video, but I just thought it could be more fun. And I kind of got jealous when I saw Jimmy's longer thing put up on the Reddit, and I was like, hey, I want that. So I'm gonna put it as a video. So the first couple of questions come from Mr. Whiskers. Um, His first question is, have you ever found your life to change a lot since becoming a part of TESD? Um, so my first project for TESD was Halloween 2017. We shot it October 20th, which was the night of my 30th birthday. So I'm going to be 39 this coming October. My life couldn't be more different uh, than it was. When I was 30, I was single for a long time before that. I turned 30. I started working for TSD, which was a dream come true because I was a fan. So I did my first project. Shortly after, I met my wife. I got my long-term job and career where I still am. Um, and, you know, I've worked with TESD more since. Um, and I've developed a lot of good relationships with the guys. I have kids now. So just on a time scale, my life is completely different. So that's one thing. My favorite memory since joining is kind of tied to that because it's crazy to me that there's a couple of memories. Uh, Overall, just like my close friendship with Walt is a crazy thing for me as someone that was a listener and still am a listener, but I was coming completely from the outside, and now that Walt's my friend, I consider him a friend. He's gonna come over and watch the Super Bowl, and he's been at my house before for the Super Bowl. That's pretty crazy to me that, we've developed a friendship like that. I'm texting Walt about hockey and all sorts of stuff. It's nuts to me that just coming as a fan, I now consider Walt such a close friend. Um, that's pretty crazy. My favorite, like, actual memory is I forget what project we did. It may have been a picnic Olympics, the first one, but afterwards we went and did a barbecue at Brian Johnson's house. And it's still more early into my time in TSD. And it's like, I'm in Bry's backyard eating burgers that he's barbecuing for us with Tom and Walt. And I remember Victor was there. I think Frank was there. I know Gedham was. And all these TSD people, and I'm someone on the outside, and now we're all hanging out making burgers. That was a crazy, crazy thing for me. Um, Three, do I have any ideas in the works to add to TESD? So I never know what idea I really am going to come up with for a project. It's kind of, I'm brainstorming something for reviewing history, my pod, or something for TSD. And, I'm like, hey, that could work. So, Cartoon Tunes was a show where I was coming up with it in my head as something for the reviewing history Patreon. But I always present my ideas to Walt first to see if, he wants to use them for TSD. I didn't think Walt was going to run with the show. Um, I was not expecting him to pick it up, and then he loved the concept, and I'm happy it's a TESD thing. So that was kind of the genesis of that. I will tell you my kind of dream TSD project, which I would love to do. I would love to do the TESD Town Dog Show. Uh, for American ants, every year after the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, they play a big dog show on TV. So I would love to kind of counter program that one with a TESD one and get everybody to bring their dogs and we'd have to expand it a bit, but like I'd do a costume contest, a trick contest, a general contest, kind of add a bit more, kind of like a picnic Olympics, but with all the guys. And you might have to expand it a bit, but let everyone bring their dogs and or cats into this contest, and I think it'd be really fun to drop that as a TSD town dog show. I think people would dig that. That's kind of like my crazy big dream TSD project. I just think it'd be fun. Have I ever felt regret for being on TSD or felt not welcome? I have never not felt welcome in the world of TSD. Uh, I've always felt like I belong. I've always felt like I'm a part of it. I've always been happy to be there. Um, yeah, I've never once not felt that. 99% of the fans I think have been cool to me. Obviously on Reddit, I don't think everybody's a fan or likes me, but for the most part, it's been totally fine. Not everyone's gonna like you. I don't think it's been anything too bad that's crossed the line. Um, Favorite memory of the show before you joined? Okay, so I'm I was a listener, and no one I knew listened to TSD. I couldn't really get people to, but I was hardcore, day one drops. If I'm not listening, it was driving me nuts. And me and my friend, we were coming back from, we had watched hockey either in Toronto or Buffalo. We used to go all over to watch different hockey things. And we're driving back, and I think episode 302 just dropped called Logbox. And I was like, hey, we're on this long drive. Do you mind if we just listen to the new TSD? And he was like, fine. So we listened, and it was the episode where they're talking about Getham's mother smothering him with a pillow. And I believe they also played Two Live Crew and One Middle Aged Jew in that episode. And me and my buddy were laughing. We loved it on the drive back. And after that, he was my roommate too. We started listening together. Like we'd play NHL together. We had like a long season campaign, and we'd play that as we was listening to TSD every week. And that was a nice little time. So I loved that. Weirdest fan interaction. I would say I've had any weird interactions. I have been noticed a bit more recently. I was at a Devils game maybe a month or two ago, and then you know, I hear "Tell him Steve Dave," and I'm looking around, and there's a guy, and he's like, "Hey man, I love TSD," and I was like, "Cool," and we shook hands. That was kind of surreal, that someone stopped me and noticed me. It wasn't weird. I mean, it's odd for me to be noticed, but other than that, yeah, that I've met has been cool. All right, this is question 7 from Shit News with a Z. What happened to that game night reviewing history crossover? It's edited, it's in the can, it's done. When will it be released in the TSD pipeline? I don't know. Uh, you know, who knows when Walt wants to release it. I think it was a lot of fun. I think it was a good episode. It was it was funny. Yeah, it's a good time. I think when it comes out, people will like it, but when that will be, I have no clue. TSD has such a bank of episodes for Patreon that I don't know where it falls in the pipeline, but it is finished and in the can. Question 8. You and Jimmy have to fight another duo WWF tag team style. Who do you think you can who do you think you two can take in a fight? Well, I personally think I could take everybody ever in a fight. I'm not scared of anybody. You put someone in front of me, I think I'm going to win. So, I think we're going to beat anybody. Now, if you want to talk about like scaling as far as like size, who's like equivalent, so it's like an even fight. So for me, uh probably just because I'm so fat now, like we need someone equally fat that's about my height. Uh I think realistically, evenly, it's probably going to be get him for me as far as size, maybe an Alex. So get him or Alex for me. And for Jimmy's size, we need like maybe Mrs. Five. They're about the same size, so I think that could be about that duo. Jimmy's 5 foot, 5'1". So yeah, we need like Mrs. Five there, I think. I think that's it. Donut says question 9. Prove to me that you and Brian Maxwell are not, in fact, the same person. Well, I don't have a Tennessee accent. I'm pretty northern, and I don't like pro wrestling. So, is that enough proof? I don't know. He also wants me to show my toes, so I'll take a foot pic and send it in the Discord so you guys can see them. I don't know. I think they're decent. All right. Papa Pink asks, question 11, why does your PP upset your wife? Probably because it's pretty small. It upsets me too, but I was born with it and, it gets the job done, I guess. So, uh, he also asks, how do you manage to afford having so many kids? I assume you flip drugs. Uh, so here's the secret to us affording kids. We don't. We struggle. Money is tight as fuck. TSD as like kind of a secondary income has bailed my ass out plenty of times just by working for them, and them existing has helped me a lot. So, um, yeah, it's hard. It's a struggle. And so many kids. I mean, we only have two so far. So, I don't want to stop. I want a baseball team, but that's besides the point. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's New York, New Jersey, so it's super expensive. Um, I'm a teacher for a decent amount of time now, so I'm at like the top of my pay scale there. I've been a teacher since 2019. It's almost public information. You could kind of see where I'm at, but yeah, we got lucky. We got a house before the price went too crazy up. And yeah, we're barely getting by. It's a struggle like everybody else. Papa Pink asks for question 13. As a Jets fan, can I just message you from time to time to cry or bitch and moan? You could definitely message me to bitch and moan. Um, I'm no longer a Jets fan. Jimmy the hair guy stole that from me. He robbed it. He kind of ruined football for me. For those that don't know, um, we were hanging out one day, and Jimmy, when I first met him, was a Houston Texans fan. He had Texans stuff when we filmed Sunday Drive all over his apartment. And I asked him, "You're a Texans fan?" And he said, "Yeah." Then the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. I invited him over for the Super Bowl, and he said, "I can't. I'm an Eagles fan. I'm going to my friend's house to watch the Eagles." And I said, "Okay." He didn't mention them all year, not in the playoffs. When they were in playoff games, he was going to Broadway shows. He wasn't a real fan. And then they win the Super Bowl, and suddenly he's taking pictures with all these guys, acting like he's friggin' a diehard Eagles fan. I made a joke and called him out on it when we were all hanging out, and then he started screaming at me, berating me like really heated. Um, and he basically called me a piece of shit and a bad person for caring about football, for being a passionate fan, giving a shit about it at all, and like screamed in my face, got deeply personal. Um, and I thought about it, and I was like, he's right. I shouldn't have any fandom. I'm a bad person if I care about a team or I like this or any of it. So after that, I just decided to front run, and I'm just going to root for whoever wins the most recent championship. So I was rooting for the Eagles all year. They're done. Right now I'm rolling with the Seahawks, but whoever wins the Super Bowl, I'll just roll with them for next year. So yeah, Jimmy kind of ruined football for me. I watch it and it's like white noise now. I feel nothing. Okay, question 14. Mr. Paper asks, Rupp, if you had to pick between Sorry, Rupp, if you had to pick between being stranded on an island, which past Jets QB you going to have stranded with you? My only Jets question. Okay, so I'm going to be stranded on an island. I can only have one Jets quarterback. Um, Joe Namath is too old. Uh, who would I want? It's really tough. I'm trying to think who's smart that can get me off the island, not, get me off physically. Um, I'm gonna pick, I think, Aaron Rodgers, just because he's like a weird hippie guy who likes, ayahuasca and stuff like that. So maybe he knows some outdoor survival stuff so we can, survive. Or I guess worst case, get really high and hopefully that helps the suffering. Okay, question 15. This is also Mr. Paper. Who is your favorite Bond ever? Second part of that, what's your favorite James Bond intro song? Okay, my favorite Bond ever. I'll give you guys the full ranking actually. Number one, Connery. Number two, Craig. Number three, Brosnan. Four, Dalton. Five more, six, Lazenby, just because he only did the one movie. So that's kind of my Bond ranking. And there's past times where I've had more at the bottom. Right now I'm on a little bit of a more kick, so I'll bump him up a spot. Favorite Bond song ever? Man, this changes from time to time. At this very moment, though, I'm on that more kick, so I'm going to say Nobody Does It Better by Carly Simon. I mean, it's an all timer. That song rules. So there you go. All right, question 16. If I had to pick between these, A, I could fly, but only 3 feet off the ground and at walking speed only, or B, I can talk to animals, but they brutally insult me with every answer on my life choices. Which would I choose to live with? Well, only one of those is a negative. So I'm definitely not gonna pick the animals. I mean, I'm a little thin-skinned and, I already have tortured myself about all my own life choices. I don't need a bunch of fucking animals to tell me I'm a fat fuck and I, threw my health away and, every bad decision I made, so I don't need that. Just floating, my life isn't that different. I mean, I guess it's good. I can just grab things a little higher, so, I'll do that. Maybe I'll play some basketball. If I float 3 feet, probably could dunk. So yeah, I'll do that. Uh, this question is technically number 69, but it's probably a different number in reality. It's from Donuts. Rub, do you think you could submit get him in the octagon if we first gave him three natty daddies? Yeah, I don't think it'd be a problem for me at all. I think I could probably submit 99% of TSD town. I'm a fairly experienced grappler. So yeah, this is from Donuts. Question 420. It's the same question, so I guess I'm fighting Walt in the octagon. Same question, but this time Walt, if we promised him a meal at Friendly's if he wins. This would be like Fight Club. When Brad Pitt just gets his ass beat, he's like, "Please, Lou, let us have it," and he's just getting the beating. It would kind of be like that. I just, I can never raise my sword, as they say at Walt. I would just take a beating and let him submit me. He can do whatever he wants to me. I revere the man too much. Okay, question 17 from Shit News with a Z. Now that Chuck lives closer, when can we expect the desperately needed popcorn kernels and any potential for other side pods with you guys? Like spots on the others' main pods, always refreshing to hear the younger TESD players. So, love that Chuck is close. It's great that he's my movie buddy. We could go see movies. It's been harder a bit more since the second kid, but I love hanging out with Chuck. He's one of my best friends. There's a popcorn kernels in the can. It's dealing with a technical issue, which is why it's not out, but it's a really good one. It's me and Chuck trying to kind of fix the continuity timeline of the Friday the 13th series to make everything make sense. I think it's a lot of fun if you like those movies and, Jason and Friday the 13th and stuff like that. I Chuck is going to be on Reviewing History pretty soon. We're going to watch the movie Straight Outta Compton, and we may be doing another Popcorn Kernels, and I may be going on Fun Bearable shortly. So, really happy that he's around. This is also from Shit News. Question 18. Thoughts on Brosnan as Bond? I grew up with him as my Bond. He will always be the one I picture. Um, totally. Agree. I love Brosnan as Bond. He's the Bond I grew up with. He's the Bond from, me as a kid. He's my first Bond. First Bond movie I saw in theaters was Tomorrow Never Dies. The GoldenEye game is what got me into the franchise. He's absolutely great. Um, I like to think of Brosnan as the best of Bond. He's the Bond that has a little bit of everything. There's a little Connery in him, a little Dalton, a little Roger Moore. He kind of sums up everything that came before him. So I really like him as Bond, and he did a great portrayal. This question is from Jarko Garko. Dear Rub, I miss License to Pod and would like to see it making a comeback. Can you do something so we get another episode? Man, you and me both. I would absolutely love for License to Pod to come back. I wish it would have gotten at least one more episode. Um, because the next one would have been GoldenEye, and I was gonna kind of combine it with 8-bit ESD or 8-BITESD, whatever it was. And I was going to have four of the guys play a little bit of GoldenEye. And I think that would have really went over well. Plus the gadget. I think it would have been a blast if we did that one. Um, it's not my call. I just don't think the show hit the way Walt wanted. If you want it, your best bet is to send a nice email requesting it. But honestly, with the passing of Tim, I think that show is done permanently, sadly. But I would love to come it back, and if I get asked, I am ready at a moment's notice to do it. All right, this is question 20 from Huvian. Uh, I know it was forever ago and only for an episode, but what was it like to be on Comic Book Men? So this is how it went from my perspective. This was in 2012 in the summer. I was getting ready to shoot my first feature-length movie called The Uninvited Guest. It's on Amazon Prime. It's terrible. None of you guys should ever watch it. Trust me. Um, but I needed some extra money, and I was like, all right, I guess I got to sell some of my books. So I got my books. I went to the stash. I kind of thought they may be filming, but I really wasn't sure. They happened to be filming. They stopped me at the door and they're like, wow, okay, you got like rare books. We'd love to put you on. Do you have all day? And I was like, yeah, I got nothing going on today. So I was there with my friend Anthony, and they're like, okay, go here. And they sent me to the bank, like where they were filming. I had to sign stuff backstage. They gave me some bottles of water. I saw the set where they shoot like the comic book segments, not the comic book segments, the podcast segments. So that was cool. It was the summer. Um, I'll tell you this. It was at a stage in my life where I was going commando at the time. And the PA who was miking me, I remember he was having a really hard time getting the mic on me, and he kind of was like in my pants, and I remember just all the ass sweat. Eventually, like he felt like it was so disgusting. I felt so bad for the guy. I wasn't planning on being mic'd. Eventually he just gave up and was like, yeah, just put this in your pocket. And I put it in my pocket, and then I went. I was on Comic Book Men. I was nervous. I sold the books. I think we did like an extra take with like, oh Walt, could you say that line again or whatever? And we did that. I dropped a Gizmos and Gadgets reference, which I don't think made the show. But I remember he asked me why I need the money, and I was like, I'm doing a movie. I'm not doing it to buy any gizmos or gadgets or anything like that. And Walt, like, kind of chuckled. And then after we were done, Nichelle wasn't producing the show, it was the other guys. So we had to go backstage and wait, and then we had to do like those interviews where they're like, what were you trying to get, what did you want to get, were you happy with the transaction? And they asked me all these questions, and I answered them, and then they let me go, and that was it, and that was the end of it. Okay, 21. Mr. Paper said, Rupert, can you act out your favorite monologue from the 007 movies? This was a tough one because most of the monologues are from the villains. Like Bond, he's very laconic, I believe. Uh, so he doesn't have, memorable speeches. A lot of his things are short and blunt, Bond, James Bond, martini shaken, not stirred. Uh, you know, a lot of one liners, things like that, witty retorts. Do you expect me to talk, Goldfinger? But one of the more memorable monologue speeches is in Skyfall, so I'll do that one for you. And I'm going to do my shitty Javier Bardem for you. All right. Hello, James. Welcome. Do you like the island? My grandmother had an island. Nothing to boast of. You could walk around it in an hour, but still, it was a paradise for us. One summer we went for a visit and discovered the place had been infested with rats. They'd come on a fishing boat and gorge themselves on coconut. So, how do you get rats off an island? My grandmother showed me. We buried an oil drum and hinged the lid. Then we wired coconut to the lid as bait, and the rats would come for the coconut and they would fall into the drum. And after a month, you have trapped all the rats. But what do you do then? Throw the drum into the ocean? Burn it? No. You just leave it, and then they begin to get hungry. And one by one, they start eating each other until there are only two left. The two survivors. And then what? Do you kill them? No. You take them and release them into the trees. And now they don't eat coconut anymore. Now they only eat rat. You have changed their nature. The two survivors. This is what she has made of us. That was my shitty version of the Skyfall speech with my accent constantly changing, but gave it my best shot. All right, this is a follow up question from Papa Pink. If Walt doesn't have not compliment, if Walt doesn't have license to pod come back, could it come over to the reviewing history Patreon? Um, that format will not return to the reviewing history Patreon. Um, Getting into the economics of it a bit, uh, we'd have to pay each of those hosts of the show money. Uh, our Patreon doesn't generate enough to have a show with a panel that big. Um, so frankly, we just couldn't afford to put it out on our Patreon. Number one. Number two, I'd feel icky kind of just stealing a format from TESD like that. Um, Even using their guys. Plus, Tim is gone. However, I did talk with Anthony about doing a Bond thing. So me and Anthony may go through the Bond movies on the Patreon ourselves. It wouldn't be licensed to pod, but there would still be Bond talk. So, kind of best of both worlds and mix it up a bit. So that may happen. But yeah, it wouldn't be licensed to pod. Okay, this is question 22 from Shit News with a Z. What's a movie you wanted to do for reviewing history, but just haven't got into it for whatever reason? I really want to do Bloodsport. I love the movie Bloodsport. I think it'd be so much fun to talk about. Those guys are against us doing Bloodsport. Um, I love that movie. I would love to talk about, Frank Dux being like a complete fraud. I think there's so much material there for us to mine. Uh, I really want to do Bloodsport, but we haven't been able to. He also asks, you're given a free pass to bail on the Devils. What team are you switching to? Uh, if I'm switching teams, which I don't have a problem anymore, post Jimmy yelling at me about, being a fan of things, I'm just going to front run and root for whoever's the best and jump lily pads and just be a perpetual front runner. So that's what I would do if I switch from the Devils. The only team I could never root for under any circumstances are the Rangers because they, in fact, eat nuts. Question 24. What TESD town members would be the most bold and outgoing to go to a random event? My money's on Jimmy. Jimmy could definitely be talked into it. Especially if you give him the star treatment he feels like he deserves. Um, Jimmy has a way bigger ego than anyone thinks. Um, One of his famous things that we always make fun of him about is after the Impractical Jokers cruise when he went up, he rapped on stage. Afterwards, he was telling people I could have any woman on this boat. Uh, so he definitely has a bit of an ego. So Jimmy is a good choice. He could definitely be talked into it. I think Chuck is pretty outgoing and he could be talked into it. He's one of the more extroverted guys. So Jimmy, Chuck, those guys would for sure. Okay, this is question 25. Rupp, if you were thrown back into the past and became a pirate, what is your pirate name? Well, I don't want to be a pirate. Uh, that's a really tough one. You know, Shitty Beard the pirate. I think my beard kind of sucks. I wish it was better. So maybe that, maybe like Shit Beard. Uh, yeah, we'll go with Shit Beard the pirate. Fear me. Um, so that's that one. I'll do another one quick with this one. 26. All right. Mr. Whiskers, what do you think is the most underrated element of the Bond franchise that most people overlook? This is a great question. And I think the most overlooked aspect of the Bond franchise is the fact that it always marches forward. I'm against going back and doing a period piece in a Bond movie. I think that would be the end of the franchise, essentially. I think it needs to always be contemporary and reflecting modern sensibilities and fashion and other things like that. I think it's one of the strongest aspects of the franchise is you could look at them and you could kind of determine what is big in movies, what is big in culture at the time, um, you know, what's popular, what's not. Like you could watch the early Connerys and the Beatles are treated as in Goldfinger, they're treated like this young upstart group of punks that it's like listen to Bieber. Oh, who would want to do that? They're like on that level in Goldfinger, and then a couple of years later, is Paul McCartney is doing "Live and Let Die" as a song. So it just shows how time changes, and I love that aspect of it. The way Bond talks, the way he's interacting with women, you know, how they're changing them to reflect what's going on in the world, different film trends. Black exploitation's popular, so they do Live and Let Die with black exploitation elements. Bruce Lee kung fu films are popular, so so they do the Man with the Golden Gun, like the Bond martial arts movie. Um, Star Wars is popular, so they do Moonraker. They're worried about AIDS, so in Live and Let Die, he's not sleeping with as many women. Um, you know, MCU and shared universes are popular, so the Craig era has this long continuity. Brosnan are these slick, polished Hollywood blockbusters. Um, yeah, it just shows different cultural things and the watches, the fashions, they're reflecting different eras. And if you go back and you're putting one in the 60s, you're really removing that mirror of the franchise, showing what is happening in the world. I think it'd be a really, really big mistake to change that. So, guys, yeah, I'm an anti time lock. I think the most underrated aspect is that. So, there you go. The final question, question 27. This is from Shit News with a Z. What's been the most absolute dog shit film you've done on reviewing history? Um, Not just the worst movie on reviewing history, but one of the worst movies I've ever seen in general is The Old Testament. It's a shitty Italian movie, kind of doing the Maccabean revolt, leading up to Hanukkah. It is absolutely terrible. Bad dubs, bad production value, shitty, cheap Italian schlock. Uh, Really, really bad, almost embarrassing movie. However, I still did kind of like it. I gotta be honest, just because it's kind of related to Hanukkah, but honestly, it is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in terms of production, filmmaking, everything else, and definitely one of the worst movies we've ever done on the show. I think the worst, especially in terms of filmmaking. So, guys, this was really fun to do, having a Q&A. Thank you, Scooter Dude's Domain, for asking me all these questions. Hopefully the answers were somewhat entertaining for you. You weren't bored. Thanks, guys.